I've also seen organizations define total rewards as the overall pyramid. So I think as long as individuals think beyond just the financial elements and think about the non-financial elements of compensation or rewards, I think the two can be used interchangeably. I tend to use total rewards for the overall package because people talk about compensation generally around financial aspects. So that's generally the way that I would encourage people to look at it. I also think the benefit of thinking of total rewards is that there are a number of things around great feedback, or when you think about, high potentials, well, what drives a high potential? It's getting great leadership and great mentorship and great ideas from the people they work with. And that actually doesn't have anything to do with compensation, but that is a really important part of total rewards. Or I would also say that organizations that are known for growing talent and challenging people is another way that most people wouldn't think of that as compensation. So I think the total rewards envelope is a better thing to use in terms of a broader term.
That's helpful. I think, the HR function to me set up total compensation as just a way to wrap a number around everything you're paying for. And every time that was brought up to me in the last 20 years, that's the thing I would see is like, well, here's the total compensation you're giving someone based on benefits and all the like. But at the end of the day, to your point, it's the middle of that pyramid that for a lot of firms is actually where they're probably most successful with talent.
Hey, you made a big assumption there. I don't know if I agree with that.
You don't? Okay. Talk to me.
Well, some of the best advice I got right out of college when I was working for that Silicon Valley technology company, my boss told me, says, Jeff, in your career, always trade money for knowledge. And I was like, what? But it was really true. It was the opportunity to learn.
Well, that's actually, I think we're in agreement. That's the middle of the pyramid.
Right. But no, what I'm disagreeing with is I don't think firms do that well. And they don't necessarily do it deliberately.
Yeah, that's probably true. That deliberate is the key point there. I think it happens a lot. I mean, I think that's why people go into consulting or go into professional services a lot is for exactly that. But to your point, they may not be purposeful about how they deliver it. And then to David's expertise, they may not even be thinking about it in the context of their total reward. They're not really even framing it that way. It just sort of happens, and they just don't even think about it as a benefit to people.
Well, professional services is kind of an apprentice system. So I think they just operate under the assumption that through osmosis, we're going to kind of share knowledge, but I don't know how deliberate it is. David, we're over here bloviating again. Why don't you answer?
I guess I'll jump in. Because I would say one of the techniques that some really well-run professional service firms are using is that they're beginning to think about the notion of apprenticeship and the notion of career development as an important part of rewards. And what I mean by that is if you think about a system, let's just say there's two ways an organization can structure their partnership. One way is to have all partners in one big group and say, you're all owners, we value you all equally. Or you could say, we're so happy you're all here, you're owners in the firm, but we want to be very clear about the expectations we have for partners as you move from being a new partner to being a senior partner. And we want to think about the arc of your career and both what we expect and how rewards will be tied to a broad array of contributions. And the reason I'm going into this long dissertation is that in fact, when you actually have both accumulating knowledge, accumulating skills, working with really inspirational partners as a newer partner, and then ultimately as you become a seasoned vet, having the expectation that you will impart knowledge, that you'll take younger partners with you to that challenging client, or that you're actually helping to shepherd relationships with clients, but then bringing in others to turn over the relationship rather than hoarding it for yourself. All of those sort of behaviors and all of those expectations need to be clearly defined. And I think the organizations that get this right actually are able to define expectations and also have the wherewithal to exit individuals who aren't living to those values and actually are demonstrating behaviors that are antithetical to what an organization believes and values and the way it wants to present itself. So I do think knowledge sharing accumulation and then sharing it back, Jeff, which is sort of the other side. Trade money for knowledge, but as you have become more expert in your career, actually impart knowledge on others and be very forthcoming with it. Don't hoard it for yourself. And the key here is if your compensation system rewards senior people for hoarding their clients and not imparting that knowledge, you have a broken system, because you're not going to inspire your younger people, and you're actually not going to be really doing your clients the best service, which is to bring everything you can bear to a client. And that is a really important part of getting a compensation system right for a professional service firm.
Can I go inside that comment real fast? I want to hear you talk about how a compensation system tends to reward that sort of bad behavior. What are some of the things that firms do? Is it overemphasizing utilization targets? What do they do that sort of, encourages sort of a knowledge hoarding behavior that a lot of firms have, or have had?
Let's take a classic traditional law firm.
Easy to pick on.
And a partner of a law firm. And from when a lawyer is a young pup associate, everyone talks about billability, billability, billability. As a new lawyer grows in their career and they knock on the door of partnership and become a partner, in addition to billability, it's getting your name on the client. It's being the named responsible party on a client and getting your name tagged on it. And in the extreme, one of the reasons why law firms have this broad proliferation of all these clients is not because necessarily every client is a high value added client, but the systems generally reward lawyers for billability and getting their name on accounts, so that when any matter is sold to those accounts, they receive some kind of reward for that or credit for that. Mm-hmm. And I would say that, Jason, an example would be a senior partner who, let's say, is late in their career, has no motivation in the most extreme systems to give away anything. Because if they bring some young partners in, maybe the client will like them more than they like them, or they could actually find that they would lose control of that account. And so for them, holding on to all of their clients until the final day that they check out of the law firm is what maximizes their value to the firm. And so that is one example at the extreme of actually having a system that doesn't generate any opportunity or any reward for sharing knowledge or sharing clients. That's a system that doesn't really provoke growth.
You're listening to Rattle and Pedal, divergent thoughts on growing your professional services firm. Your hosts are Jason Malicki, principal of Rattleback, the marketing agency for professional services firms, and Jeff McKay, former CMO and founder of strategy consultancy Prudent Pedal. If you find this podcast helpful, please help us by telling a friend and rating us on iTunes. Thank you. Now back to Jason and Jeff.
Yeah, I love that example. I have a friend who's a senior partner in a law firm, and I remember he said to me one day, basically, he's like, I'm never writing anything ever again. He's like, I hate writing, thought leadership type stuff. He's like, I'm never doing it ever again. And he's probably the most knowledgeable person in the firm, right? So you basically have that top tier of individuals saying, I really have no interest in sharing my knowledge really outside the firm at all. I don't know about inside. And like you said, he's not rewarded to do it, and he doesn't want to do it. So those two things kind of tee up together and create a self-fulfilling prophecy of it not happening. So
I want to build on your comment, Jason, because you touched on thought leadership and its creation. David, when you put these reward systems in place, you've already alluded to, there's certain behaviors aligned with values. There's certain behaviors aligned with, I'm assuming, revenue management or revenue generation. Jason just talked about thought leadership. What are generally the levers that you try to reward in the programs that you develop that really build and reinforce a culture? And which ones do you try to disincentivize? Discourage, I guess is the word. Discourage.
Culturification? Wasn't that our word from last time?
Enculturation. Enculturation.
Oh, we like that word.
Well, I guess, Jeff, I would, and every organization has to work through themselves. So I wouldn't propose that there's any sort of magic 5, but I think the things that, in my experience, that for professional service firms to really get the most out of the way they structure total rewards is to be thinking about, in addition to thought leadership and people development and great client relationships and revenue generation, collaboration is often a really important element of what really differentiates